Welcome to the Words to Empower podcast, featuring Bishop Frank Stewart, pastor of the Acts Ministry in Conway and North Little Rock. And now, Pastor Stewart.
We've been talking about this month, men of substance, leaving a legacy of integrity. Men of substance, leaving a legacy of integrity. Now, I don't know if you've been blessed, but I've been tremendously blessed by the Word of God, talking to men. And one thing I believe the Lord has shared with me, that the men are making a comeback. And that's why we have this book, Father Deficiency, and we spent a great deal of time talking to men and dealing with the head, those that was created in the image and likeness of God. I took my subject and my theme for the month of June from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 11. And I want to read a few verses for you in Mark, chapter 11, starting at verse number 12. It says, "On the next day, when they were coming from Bethany, Jesus was hungry, and seeing a fig tree afar off, having leaves, he came, if perhaps he might find anything thereon. And when he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for the time of figs was not yet. So what he found was leaves. It had leaves, but it didn't have any figs. It had no substance." Now, this is what we've been talking about the whole month of June. Had leaves, but it didn't have any figs. The leaves represented figs. Whenever a fig tree have leaves, it should have figs. Jesus was hungry. He needed substance. He needed something to strengthen him, something to re-energize his body. He needed to eat something. But when he came and he searched the tree, all he's found was leaves. So from this, we have spent the whole month talking about men of substance, because what God is doing, he's raising up a group of men that are men of substance. They're not just leaves. They're not just hypocrites. And this fig tree represented the religious people of Jesus' day. They were hypocrites. So he's looking for men of substance. And I believe that we have a group of men. We have an army of men that are rising to the occasion to be men of substance. So there was no figs on it. So Jesus could not refresh himself. He couldn't eat something to be re-energized and to strengthen his body. But verse 14 says this, "And Jesus answered and said to it, No man eat fruit of you hereafter forever. And his disciples heard it. And they come to Jerusalem, and Jesus went into the temple, and beginning to cast out them that sold and bought in the temple, and overthrew the tables of the money changers, and the seats of them that sold doves, and would not permit that any man should carry any vessel through the temple. And Jesus taught, saying to them, Is it not written, My house shall be called of all nations the house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves." We go down, and when evening came, verse 21 says, "And Peter, calling to remembrance, said to him, Master, behold, the fig tree which you curse is withered away. And Jesus answering said unto him, Have faith in God, or have the God kind of faith." Now, we've been talking about this all month, but I haven't dealt with verse number 14. I want you to hear this. "And Jesus answered and said to it." Jesus answered the fig tree. Now, when you look up this word answered, and you look it up in the Greek, or you just look up how it was used in the Old Testament, it is a response to a question. It is a response to a comment. Jesus answered the fig tree. Now, I want to talk about for a few minutes this morning that it is time for men of substance to answer. It is time for us as men of God to answer. Now, when you look at this fig tree, and since we know that communication is about 80%, more than 80% nonverbal, this tree spoke to the Lord. it was saying something to him. It was a rebellious tree. It was a tree that represented the religious people of Jesus' day. But he spoke to it. Why did he speak to it? Because death and life is in the power of the tongue. Death and life is in the power of our tongue. So Jesus spoke to a situation and a circumstance that was in his way. Now in verse 23, Mark chapter 11, verse 23, as we read on, Jesus says to them, "For verily I say unto you, that whosoever shall say unto this mountain, Be thou removed, be thou cast into the sea, shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe that those things which he saith shall come to pass, he shall have whatsoever he saith." He spoke to it. And brothers, it's time for us as men of substance. And I don't care what has happened in your life. I don't care what you've experienced. I don't care what kind of mistakes you've made. God created you to be a man of substance. He created you to have dominion and to subdue anything that came across your path that was ungodly or that stood in your way. He spoke to the fig tree. It is time for us as men of substance to speak to things in our lives. This fig tree represents the things that should be but aren't. The things that should be a certain way, but when you go there, it's the opposite of what one expects. I've told you over and over that life will become the worst nightmare you will ever live unless you use the Word of God. Life will be a nightmare. We can't say, "Que sera, sera," what will be, will be. No. He tells us if we cooperate with him, use his word, we can bring things into existence. We can declare things. Just like in the book of Genesis, God showed us what to do. When he moved on the face of the deep, when he saw darkness, he didn't say darkness. He didn't speak and say how dark it was. He didn't talk about the chaos. What God said is, "Let there be light." And I'm telling you, my brother, that since we are men of substance, that's how we were designed. We're designed to be men of substance. We were designed that when we open our mouths, that it would guide us to our destiny. In the book of James, it says to us that our tongue will determine our destiny. I'm paraphrasing, but whatever way our speech goes, that's the way our life will go. So death and life is in the power of the tongue. I'm encouraging you to say something. I'm encouraging you not to just to give up because life has dealt you a blow. Because something has happened in your life that you didn't expect. When Jesus came to that fig tree, he did not expect that fig tree not to have figs. He was looking and searching for figs to satisfy his hunger. I want you to think about it. Think about that. It was hot. He was sweaty, he was hungry, he was tired, and he needed energy. And he came expecting something. What do when your expectations all fall to the ground? When you thought it was getting better, when you thought you was on the verge of coming out, and all of a sudden you realize everything is turned wrong side up, upside down. What do? Jesus spoke to it. He spoke to it. He commanded it. Words left his mouth. And he spoke to it. It's time for us to say something. I know you're watching me this morning. I know you're in a situation or a circumstance. I know you're wrestling with some kind of addiction. I know maybe you just came in after wrestling all night. Paul said, "The good I would." In Romans chapter 7, verse 19, he said, "The good I would, I do not, but the evil I don't want to do, that I find myself doing." He later on concludes in Romans chapter 7, "O wretched man that I am, Who shall deliver me from this death trap? So it doesn't matter what has happened. We have to understand that God made us men of substance. Now, whether we realize it or not, it's there. It must be cultivated. Let me say to you what Paul said to Timothy. Stir up the gift that is within you. He told him to stir it up. Now, if you've been born again and filled with the power of God, filled with the power of God according to Acts chapter 1 and verse 8, if you've been filled with his power, according to Acts chapter 2 and verse 4, and the Spirit of God has engulfed you, the Spirit of God has come out of you in a wonderful language, then you are a man of substance. And if you haven't, you can be. You can have the Spirit of God inside of you, because your body was designed to be the temple of the living God. God says, I'm going to walk in you. I'm going to talk through you. I'm going to be your God, and I want you to be my people. I'm excited. I'm excited to see the men rise into the occasion. I'm excited to see what God is doing, not only in my life, but in your life. I know you feel something vibrating on the inside. I know you sense something out of the ordinary. I know that what used to be easy to do, now you're finding difficult to do. You know what it is? It is God knocking on the door of your heart. And he is saying, I designed you to be a man of substance. A man that can live by the word of God. And we can do, this is what Jesus is showing them in Mark chapter 11, on how to become a man of substance. Step by step. He's showing them how to be a man of substance. In the book of Jude, we see another illustration. And the illustration we see in the book of Jude, the Lord talks about clouds that have no rain.
For mobile giving, text the amount you wish to donate to 501-302-4242.
The Acts Church in North Little Rock is located at 1224 Franklin Street. For more information, go to actsministriesonline.org or give us a call at 501-329-2055.
Thank you for tuning in to the Acts Ministry Podcast. The Acts Church is located at 1423 England Street in Conway and 1224 Franklin Street in North Little Rock, Arkansas. Tune in each day to hear an inspiring word from Pastor Frank Stewart.